Hey everyone, Cargo Bike Cowboy here. Got a quick tip for you on camping. We've been camping for about probably over a month now. Just staying at campgrounds, going to work, coming back to the campground at night, and on the weekends, and just like continuously camping. So everywhere we've went, I've seen people set up tents, but all they do is set up their tent. And I want to show you the way that I do it, and I'll tell you the reasons why I do it this way. So let me move the camera down here a little bit. Better move it back some too. So there you can see I have a tent. It's an old Ozark Trail tent that I got at Goodwill for like $5. And it's 12 foot long, it's 8 foot wide, okay? And when I got it, the first time we hit a rainstorm in it, it leaked through the sides and in the bottom. So I went and got some silicone spray for fabric, treated it up, and now it doesn't leak. But I always put a tarp over my tent. And there's a couple reasons I do this. One, that's one of the silver reflective tarps. And it reflects the sun, and the space underneath the tent allows a breeze to blow through. So during the day, like especially on a weekend, let's say you're at your campsite, maybe you need to take a nap or you just want to go in the tent for whatever reason. Well, it's going to be smoking hot in there, but with that silver reflective tarp, it lowers the temperature by 5 to 10 degrees inside the tent. The other thing it does is it's really good at repelling rain. The other night we had a huge rainstorm come through, and we were in the tent, and I had the back windows down and the front windows down. Well, I had to zip the back windows up because the tent only covers very little of the back. The tarp is 12 feet by 16 feet. I got to put 12 feet over the tent and then 16 feet for each side. And that gives me a 4-foot porch in the front. You can see the chairs are there, the table's there. What this does is it enables you, if you wake up to come out of your tent for whatever reason and it's downpouring rain, you don't step out into the pouring rain and get soaked. It's like having a little porch over your tent. And it also sheds all the water. When the water falls off that tarp, it's not hitting your tent coming straight down the sides and soaking the ground underneath your tent, which with an older tent, sometimes it can leak through the bottom if the treatment on the bottom for waterproofing is gone. So what this does is it sheds all that water away from the tent. You can see it's probably 2.5, 3 feet away from the side of the tent, so all that water is falling over there in the grass. And as long as you're not in a low-lying area with your tent, that water will not run towards your tent. And that's the whole reason I put a tarp over my tent. But I never see people do this. Like everywhere we've camped, we've been to 3 different campgrounds in the last month, and everyone that sets up a tent, they never put a tarp over it. But you should always have a tarp, in my opinion, over your tent. It can provide you a lot of shade. It shelters your tent. And let's face it, if you're buying a tent at Walmart, like an Ozark Trail or a Coleman's the better of the two because they have a tub floor. But if you have a cheap tent, the chances of it leaking, especially if it's older, they just get greater and greater with age. So I'm going to take the camera. We're going to go around the sides of the tent. This is another important feature I want to point out. I got to move the camera down a little bit again. Let's see if I can get this. Okay. When you stake out your tent, okay, try not to tie directly to these grommets. You see these little silver grommets and these cheap tarps? This is only an 8mm tarp. So when you tie onto that grommet, you're pulling that grommet through the material. And a lot of times on a cheap, this is a $20 tarp I bought at Menards. A lot of times this grommet will just pull clean through. It'll break off, rip. a better way to do it is like this. You take a piece of wood. You can see it's half round. It's flat on the bottom. This was just a stick that I found on the ground. And all I did was take all the bark off it. I split it in half, and then I made a hole through it. I used my bushcraft knife to start the hole, and then I used my Swiss Army knife, the little awl on the back of it, to put the hole all the way through, and then the cord slips up through the hole, up through the center of this, and I used a figure-8 knot to secure it. And what this does is it puts a lot of pressure across the hole, so it goes across and then down and through, and it doesn't pull directly on the material like if you have it tied. And I do that at every point where I have it on the sides. There's 3 points tied down on the sides, and this thing has held up through a couple of big thunderstorms too, where it was flapping around a lot, but it has a lot of movement to it for the wind. If it's tethered down too tight, you'll just rip it to shreds. You want to leave it loose, but not super loose. The other thing I had to do was, if you can see that, see that stake right there? That's just another stick I found on the ground. I was 1 stake short, so I had to make my own out of a piece of wood. And I removed that at the last campground we were at, brought it with me, and used it again. So it's held up remarkably well. And all I'm using is some 550 cord here, because the tarp that I originally had, it came with a few ropes, but I ran out of those ropes and I had to make some of my own. And all I'm using is a trucker's hitch here to pull tension on it. And I'll show you the back. Let's move back some. So there's a view of the back. You can see it only comes maybe, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 inches from the back of the tent, and the rain fly is on the tent. So with that being 6 or 8 inches from the rain fly, the chances of rain coming in there in the back windows when it's raining is probably pretty good if it's raining hard and the wind's blowing a lot. But with the little porch on the front, you can leave the front windows open all the time. You don't really have to worry about rain getting in there. The other thing I want to point out about these tarps is this. Let me raise this camera back up there. Okay. This pole is sticking up through that grommet, but because of the tension between the front and the back pole, it did rip the grommet loose, and I tried to repair it with some cheap-ass duct tape, which did not work. I got some better duct tape now, and I'm going to do some repairs on it. I also have another repair to do on the rain fly on the side, where there's a little piece of fabric that comes out to tie a string to stake out the sides to give airflow through the tent, but it's starting to rip loose from the fabric, so I'm going to stitch that up today and do the repair. I've already sprayed this whole thing down, the whole tent down, with silicone water sealant, and now it does not leak anywhere. So that's not bad. It was like a $5 tent, and the 2 cans I used were like $16, $17. So I'm going to get good use out of this cheap tent. It's an old Ozark Trail, not very modern. Thing's probably 10, 15 years old. It's pretty old tent. But I just wanted to give you this tip for when you're camping. You know, to put a tarp over your tent, it really can help a lot. I got some pieces of kit I want to make some videos for, so probably this weekend I'll make some more videos about a piece of kit I've had for a couple years that works real well for camping. And we're not camping on the bikes right now. We're in the car because we're too far from work to ride bikes back and forth. So we're just in the car right now, unfortunately. I'd rather be on my bike and doing that, but it's just not feasible right now. So this is the Cargo Bike Cowboy. Y'all have a great day, and I hope to see you again soon.